All right, so this week is going to be one of those interesting weeks. So the price tag of leadership, uh, part nine with Joseph Gantar and Gantar Enterprise. So we're talking about integrity and how that's going to look like. Okay, so it's a big journey. So here we are. The meaning of integrity is to be complete or unified. This doesn't mean that you're going to be an open book and just reveal all your secrets. This just means that, hey, what I ever tell you and whatever I do are the same things. Now you can determine how much or how little of that information that you're going to share to follow through on over in the spectrum. It doesn't mean that you are open to sharing everything about everything. It's about seeing and getting the same thing. How many people can actually say and do the same thing? I'm going to show up, and they actually show up, or they actually do what they claim to do. It's just not one of those things that are unfortunately very common these days. Essentially, these people who are who are not hiding from fear or allowing thing allowing anything to say, I have to hide behind this because of this and that. They don't hide or fear anything. It's just one of those things that they are going to give you a certain amount of information. Now, regardless of what that amount of information is, I cannot stress this enough, but at least they follow through on it. So live what I teach. Never ask a young person, what do they want to do? Ask, who do they want to be like? Develop the person for the outcome. See, you're not going to have a child who's going to be like, okay, well, I want to be, and they fill in the blank. And then you set them up for something completely different from what they wanted to be. See, that's the big gap of when you're able to set people apart is, are they actually on the right track right from the start? As character has to be developed before the person and mature enough to withstand the never-ending pressures of what they're potentially going to come their way. Well, here's the thing. If you don't actually prepare the individual right from the start to you actually knowing what's going to be at the end of the road, how is that even going to be relevant in their journey? You're literally either setting them up to be prepared or you're going to be setting them up to just fall. These are things that are just very difficult to see initially, but if you're able to see big picture and move forward, that's where you're going to see everything kind of come together. Okay. Developing integrity and do what I say. So if you promise something to someone in an organization, the wisest thing to do is to follow through on it. The reason being is because if you don't, this could be one of the major things that actually are potentially a small thing because you say and do something here, you say and do something there, and there's all these little things that continuously line up regardless of what was handed to that individual in that time or in that phase of the organization of where that organization stands, it'll either rise and explode or completely disintegrate and implode into nothing if that is not actually completed. Something very small. It's the small things that'll take you out. So many executives have fallen short in their career due to not being willing to follow through. Either they are forced to early retirement or they're forced to move on. An organization will implode due to this not being kept at the highest standards. So, as you can see, how much credibility would a basketball coach have if he just didn't follow through in what he said in practice in the game? Like I played on pretty wild, you know, runs, I guess if you want to say one in my younger years and in championships and everything else. But here's the thing. When that coach led whatever he said on the practice, laid out on the game, and it came true, more often than not, we've had very successful seasons because of just the commitment and follow through of the coach. Okay. Develop integrity. Be honest with others. It's very difficult to have a very gelled and unified culture if that's not the case. If someone in a position and is misleading the facts or covering up for something, say goodbye to your credibility. This will be nearly impossible to repair. So never give out false, not necessarily information, but falsifying the whole event. This is going to be catastrophic to anything or to anyone, because what ends up happening is that it actually does come out in the end. And whether or not whatever happens, immediately you'll see the outcome very quickly on how that actually transpires and surfaces, not through maybe that single organization, but could potentially circle around back to that organization in the long run. See, many people think that, well, if I just say this and say that and they moved on, they thought, well, that's just it. It doesn't work like that. I know I've been in a position where people like to say a lot of things behind my back, but I don't mind. You want to know why? Because they're better behind me than ahead of me. So I just let it go. You have to be able to learn how to let it go. I've had to learn how to let that go. Sometimes it's been easy, sometimes it's been hard, but in the end, it's been worth every single moment of my sanity of just letting it go. I can't control others, but I can control what I do. I can control how I present myself and how I move forward in other areas of my life from that one particular moment or situation. If someone's trying to cut you down and destroy you, that obviously means that they want nothing but the worst from you. Why? Because they're not satisfied with themselves. So don't let others who are unsatisfied with themselves, who can't even help themselves, destroy you. It's never going to happen if you are continuously moving forward and saying, you know what, fine, you want to have it your way, leave it, and then let them have it to their own way. Why? Because they'll fall to their own devices, eventually their own actions, and who knows what will come their way. Dr. William Schultz, who actually developed this, was actually with Procter & Gamble and NASA, which is very interesting because he developed a truth management studies. And in his studies, these strategies believed that they were the key to productivity and how people work together. How well did they actually gel together? How well were they able to actually accomplish goals and resources and outcomes to make sure that they were able to reach the highest of highest goals, schedule, deadlines, everything in that sense. But here's the thing. And nothing would truly be productive if a mutual trust and honesty are not established. So you have to have, I understand, and hopefully you would be able to understand that you can't have everything wide open because there's different levels of trust. There's different levels of transparency. Okay. In an organization, it's just because people are put in certain situations and certain environments, and you never know what the outcome is. If you're in a leadership role or if you're in a subordinate role, it really doesn't matter. The reality is that organization is always under a threat, whether they be internally with an employee revealing trade secrets within that organization, or an external threat of a competitor trying to move in and trying to dissolve that corporation's established product or service, essentially. So there has to be different levels of transparency. There has to be different levels of trust and different levels of management. But at the same time, you have to have at least something where a lot of people are able to just say and do the same things and follow through. It's just that simple. That's what has to happen. So if people in business are just told the truth, 80 to 90% of their problems would actually go away. If they wouldn't hide and if they wouldn't scheme and if they wouldn't do this or if they wouldn't do that, then I can almost guarantee you that things would be much easier if they just told the truth. Develop integrity, put ahead of what is best for others before me. For the other before me. Okay, so when you're looking at the organization's interests must become before mine, that just means if you're going to do something, is it just solely for your own benefit or is that for the benefit of the many? Plain and simply said, you can't get any more black and white than that. When this is done, integrity is kept by those who hired me or who hired them. Why? Because if you're always having the best interests of the organization and they continue to establish this standard and this type of culture that is so hard to actually come by now, you're going to see some of the greatest things happen. And those things will be major growth in an organization. You cannot actually have a large organization without someone always having the best interest for the organization instead of themselves. That's basically the epitome of self-led leadership. They're not doing it for their own benefit and filling their own pockets per se, but they're trying to make sure it's the better good for many. So the interests of those I work with, if they are kept before mine, you're not going to believe this. When this is done, you establish loyalty and friendships. And what happens is you actually have people that are willing to work together and to push together. So a heavy load is lighter with many hands instead of the other way around. Okay? So you have to be able to continue to push forward in this way. In limited form, though. Okay, so develop integrity, be transparent and vulnerable. To a certain degree, remember, you're not revealing everything to everybody. I mean, that's just crazy. Okay, but you have to remember that there's two options: being closed or open. They both have their place, and they're both positive and negative. And why is this? Well, here's a few things to take into consider. If I close my arms, I will not get hurt, but my productivity is going to go way down. If I actually open myself and open my arms, I have a good chance that I will get hurt. It's just the person or the human condition, if you want to put it that way. But when you release that one person, but at least I will be able to receive help, and I have those around me to help me to move forward. And that's probably going to be one of the toughest and hardest things to actually establish, because who's willing to actually put themselves in a position of vulnerability, knowing that they're potentially going to get hurt? The odds of themselves are greater for them to get hurt than not to. It's very difficult. But the risk is there, sure. The reward is much higher, though, in the end. Okay. So for myself, I've chosen to be open. It has costed me, yes, a lot, in fact, but I offer not a job, but myself, with a great culture to empower others. And these are just some of the things that I've noticed over the years in being certain roles that have allowed me to experience different things, that have allowed me to actually push on forward, regardless of what was at stake. I've always came up brighter and better on the other end. Why? Because I chose others before myself. Next week, we'll finish off this series, and this will be the conclusion of the Price Tag of Leadership Part 10. We'll be moving into another series right after. Until next time, we'll be there next week at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Work hard and stay humble.